Here is a video for the third quarter progress check in pre-calculus. You're going to need some separate paper. It's impossible to do all of this on this page. So number one says simplify each expression, do not evaluate. So we're going to match to our formulas. Let me fold my formula sheet here because we only need part of it. So 2 sine angle cosine angle matches to the double sine identity. So this is sine of 2 times 17, which is the sine of 34 degrees. So in B, it goes cosine, cosine, sine, sine. So that matches here with the cosine sum and difference. Because that's subtraction, I'm going to use a plus between the angles. So this is cosine of pi over 7 plus 3 pi over 7. So that is cosine of 4 pi over 7. So then in C, sine cosine matches here with the sine sum identity. With the subtraction between, we're going to use subtraction from the identity. So that's 7 minus 3, so that is the sine of 4. Oh, no degrees, just 4. Tangent, well, the only choice for that is this tangent formula. With a plus in the numerator, we're going to add the angles. So that's tangent of 36 degrees. Now for E, 1 minus 2 sine is a form of the cosine double angle. So this is cosine of 2 times pi over 9, which is just cosine of 2 pi over 9. In F, we've got cosine, cosine, sine, sine again. With a plus is subtract the angles. That is cosine of 3. Now we have a square root, so I'm going to jump down here to these two with a plus, so that's cosine half angle. So that's 23 over 2 degrees. And then H, sine cosine, is sine 7 pi over 13 plus 5 pi over 13. So we get 12 pi over 13. Okay, for number 2, determine the following. This I need separate paper for. First, on the side, I'm going to draw what we're given. That A is between 0 and pi over 2, and cotangent, which is adjacent over opposite. Using Pythagorean theorem, we have to find the hypotenuse. So now sine of 2A, if you look at your formula sheet, is 2 sine A cosine A. So I'm going to get the sine and cosine values from this picture. And here's A. So sine is 5/13. And cosine is 12/13. So multiplying 2 times 5 times 12 is 120. 13 times 13 is 169. So now for B, cosine of 2A, you can use any of the cosine choices. I'm just going to pick the first equation that is equal to. We're going to fill in our fractions, 12/13 and 5/13. Square your numerators and denominators. And then subtract. We already have a common denominator, which is nice. All right, C is sine of A divided by 2. So using our half angle identities, we have to decide plus or minus. for the square root. So since this is in the first quadrant, it's going to be a positive. So then filling this in, cosine from our picture is 12/13. And then I'm going to use the calculator because why not? Change it to a fraction, and that is 1/26. Well, when you square root a fraction, that's the square root of numerator over the square root of denominator. So I'm going to, simplify. The square root of 1 is 1. The square root of 26 we're going to remain. And that would be our answer to C. And then D is cosine of A over 2. So again, because the triangle's in the first quadrant, we have a positive radical. And the identity from your formula sheet looks like this. So again, I'm going to use my calculator. So that's the square root of 25 over the square root of 26, which gives me 5 divided by the square root of 26. Okay, number 3 is solving. So I'm going to isolate the sign. So I'm going to subtract the root 2. Divide by 2. And this problem wants answers in degrees. So I need to think what angle gives me sine is root 2 over 2. And that's going to be a reference angle of 45. But negative, so in this quadrant, so we do 180 plus 45. So that is one angle of 225. And then also in this quadrant with a reference angle of 45. So that's 360 minus 45, and that is 315. And then B, I'm gonna move my cosines to one side and the constants to the other. So I would like a positive coefficient. So I'm gonna subtract the 3 cosine to the right and subtract the 5 to the left. Divide both sides by 2. And then we have to think, okay, what angle gives us cosine is negative 1/2? So if you are a unit circle person, you can use your unit circle. If you're a special triangle person like me, 30, 60, 1, 2, root 3. So cosine of 1/2 gives me a reference angle of 60, but negative, so that's the second quadrant and the third quadrant. Okay, next, more solving, but this time in radians. So let me write my questions down. Okay, so for A, I'm going to subtract the 1 to the right. And then what angle gives me tangent of 1 is pi over 4. But we need the quadrants where tangent's negative. So that's the second quadrant and the fourth quadrant. We have to factor, and I don't like factoring with sine, so I'm going to use W. The only way to multiply to W squared is 2W and W. The only way to multiply to 1 is 1 and 1. To add to a -3, both of these will have to be negative. So now we factor to 2 sine x minus 1 sine x minus 1. Set each factor equal to 0. Isolate the sine x. Okay, let me start with this one. When does sine equal 1? That only happens at pi over 2. And when does sine equal 1/2? That is a reference angle of pi over 6. So in the second quadrant, where sine is also positive 5 pi over 6. Okay. Prove the following. More paper needed. So 5a. I'm going to work on the left side. So I'm going to change cotangent to cosine divided by sine. And since this first term is over 1, we see that these divide, and we are left with cosine of theta. For b, I think I'm going to multiply out the squared. So whether you're a FOIL or a box method, so sine times sine, sine times cosine, cosine times sine, and then cosine times cosine. So I notice sine squared plus cosine squared is 1, and then I have 2 sine x cosine x's. And since I know that's my end result on my formula sheet, I can see that 2 sine cosine is sine of tooth angle. So that equals sine of 2x, and we're done. Cosecant divided by 1 plus cotangent squared. Well, I'm hoping the denominator can simplify. So let's see. 1 plus cotangent squared is cosecant squared. So I'm going to use that identity. Well, that's nice. 1 in the numerator eliminates 1 in the denominator. So we're left with 1 divided by cosecant, which simplifies to sine. Do d over here. Now for d, on the left, we can get a common denominator. So anytime you're adding or subtracting fractions, you need a common denominator. So my common denominator is going to be cosine times sine. So this term is missing a cosine. This term is missing a sine. So when I combine that, I'm going to get sine squared plus cosine squared divided by cosine sine. So the numerator is 1 from our Pythagorean identity. Where are we trying to get to? Secant, cosecant. Well, if I think of this as 1 over cosine times 1 over sine, 1 over cosine is secant, and 1 over sine is cosecant, and that is our answer. All right, for E, it's going to be easier to expand the left. So what I'm going to do is, after I get some space, use the sine sum identity. And then the difference. So this is going to be sine, cosine, same, cosine, sine, plus, now do the difference identity. And then I notice this term is positive and this term is negative and they match, so that adds to 0. Sine x cosine y, sine x cosine y is 2 of them. And that is the answer we were supposed to get. All right, last but not least for F, on the left, I can factor out a sine squared. So I'm left with 1 plus tangent squared. Oh, 1 plus tangent squared is secant squared. And then I'm gonna change secant squared into its reciprocal of 1 over cosine squared. So this is sine squared divided by cosine squared, which is tangent squared, the answer we wanted. More solving in 6. All right, 6a. I'm gonna isolate the cosine. So I'm gonna subtract 9. Divide by 3. Well, this is not on my unit circle, so I'm stuck using the calculator. Good thing our test is calculator based. So to isolate the angle, I'm gonna do inverse. I'm gonna make sure I'm in degree mode. So I'm gonna do cosine inverse of -2/3, oops. It's 131.8 degrees. So if I put that here, I know my reference angle is 48.2 degrees. And the reason I need that is because I need the other place that cosine's negative, which is in the third quadrant. So I'm gonna do 180 plus 48.2 to get 228.2 degrees. Oh, another factoring. So you got 3 sine squared plus 7 sine plus 2. So that's, oops, 3w squared plus 7w plus 2. So 3 and 2 are prime, which is nice. So we can still do this little trial and error. But the 2, I don't know if I'm gonna put the 2 here and the 1 here or vice versa. So you have to check, and I'll show you another method to factor after this one. And what we're gonna do is, okay, if you're a FOILer or a distributor, we know that 3 times this outside and the inside times W is gonna have to add to 7. So if I put the 1 here and the 2 here, that's gonna be 3 plus 2 is 5. That doesn't work. So this must be the 2 and this must be the 1. And they're both gonna be positive. Let's check. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is the 7. So really this is 3 sine theta plus 1 sine theta plus 2. The other method of factoring real quick is box method, which works nicely when this leading coefficient is not 1. So we do 3 times 2 is 6. And of all the ways to multiply to 6, 1 and 6 is what adds to 7. So I put my first term in the top left, the 2 in the bottom right, and the 1w and the 6w, I split the 7 into these terms. So now I have to put my binomials on the outside that would multiply to this box. So let's see, to get 2, I'm gonna do 2 times 1, and the 2 has to go here because of the 6. It can't go up here because of the 1. So that means this has to be 3w, and that's w. So there's our 2 factors. So now we're gonna set each factor equal to 0. Isolate the sign. Now automatically, I know this answer does not exist because the range of the sine function is only from 1 to -1. So this -2 is out of the range, there has no solution. But over here, now I'm gonna find sine inverse of -1/3. Gives me -19.47. So really the reference angle is 19.5. I'm gonna round that. So 19.5 in the third quadrant and the fourth quadrant. Gives me angles of 199.5 degrees and 340.5 degrees. And for C, ooh, a squared. Cosine squared theta equals 1/2. I'm gonna square root both sides so that I can solve, but when you square root both sides, we need plus or minus. I'm not going to use my calculator for this because I know cosine equals 1 over root 2 at 45 degrees. But now I need all 4 quadrants because of the plus or minus. So 180 minus 45, 180 plus 45, and 360 minus 45. Gives me those 4 answers. All right, so apparently we forgot to type a number 7, so one less problem to do. On to number 8. Draw a triangle, A, B, C. Little c is across from angle C, and I can find that angle because all the angles have to add up to 180. So this angle is 81. Find the measure of side B, so that's here. So we're gonna use law of sines. So sine of 58 over B equals sine of 81 over 19.7. I'm gonna cross multiply. Divide by sine of 81. And we get 16.915 centimeters. Be precise and label your units. Okay, number 9. So side A is 9, side B is 12, side C is 16, and we want angle B. So we're gonna use law of cosines. So 12 squared equals 16 squared plus 9 squared. Now these formulas are on your formula sheet. So I folded mine in half. Let me unfold it. Down here underneath the identities. Because the variable is the angle, we cannot separate the 2 times 16 times 9. So the 16 squared I can move to the left, and the 9 squared I can move to the left. So let's see what that equals. Negative 193. And then I can multiply these together. So negative 2 times 16 times 9, negative 288. Now I can divide both sides by negative 288, and we get 0.670 dot dot dot. And to get the angle, I'm going to do cosine inverse of that whole answer because you need the whole thing. So angle B is 47.9 degrees because nearest tenth of a degree. Okay, in 10 we have to find everything. A is 58, side A is 11.4, and side B is 12.8. So I think we have to find angle B first. It's the only thing based on the measurements. I'm going to multiply both sides by 12.8 to isolate the sine B. So sine of 58 divided by 11.4 times 12.8 is 0.952 dot dot dot. Inverse, so 72.2 degrees for angle B. So now I know all my angles have to add up to 180. So 180 minus 58 minus 72.2 leaves me with 49.8 for angle C. So then side C, you can either use law of cosines or you can do law of sines again. This one, because the variable is in the denominator, it's not the angle. I'm going to cross multiply. And divide by the sine of 58. So C is 10.3. No units. The owner of a garage shows his plans. The roof lengths are in bold. How many feet does he need to purchase? Okay, so I'm gonna have to add up whatever those answers are. This missing angle, if these add to 100, this angle is 80. Actually, these sides are gonna be equal because it's isosceles, so let's just find one of them. So the sine of 80 over 20 equals the sine of 50 over W. Cross multiply. Divide by sine of 80. Be careful with your own handwriting that you know what you're writing there. So W is 15.6 feet. So the trim is 2W, so times 2, 31.1 feet is the answer. You're at an airplane. How much further does the plane have to travel? So if we find X and Y, add them together and subtract from 50, that's how much further. Let's find this missing angle. That's 126. Doesn't matter which one we find first. Let's find X. So sine of 20 over X is the sine of 126 over 50. When you solve for X, you're gonna get 50 sine of 20 over the sine of 126. Let's see what that equals. Three decimal places, so 21.138. Let's find Y. Sine of 126 over 50 equals sine of 34 over Y. When you solve for Y, you're gonna get 50 times the sine of 34 divided by the sine of 126. That is 34.560. So if we add those up, the total distance was 55.68. So X plus Y is 55.698. So how much further is we're gonna subtract 50 and get 5.698 miles as the final answer. Okay, area of a triangle. This formula is also on your formula sheet. And the key is you have to have the angle between two sides. So the area is 1/2 4 times 10 times the sine of 30. That is 10, no units. A real estate appraiser wants to find the value of the land. Okay, determine the length of the third side. Let's use law of cosines. Uh-oh, I'm gonna run out of space. Cosine of 62. This is the kind that you can just type straight in your calculator because all of the values are on one side of the equation. but I need just x, so the square root of the answer is 224.3 decimal places. So let's do 816. Find the area. Okay, so area is 1/2 250 160 sine of 62, because this is the angle between the two sides. One 7,658.3 decimal places, so 952 feet squared. Oh, this is feet. An acre is that many square feet. If the land is 56,000 per acre, what is the value of the lot? Well, let's find out how much of an acre we have. We have 0.405 an acre times 56,000. So that's, let me write down the math I did. $22,702.05. Okay, on to vectors. Component form is end minus beginning. So 0 minus 2, 4 minus -1 is -2, 5. B. All right, 16, magnitude and direction. Oh, B is a repeat, so we'll just do magnitude. All right, so I'm gonna call it vector V. So the magnitude is the square root of 6 squared plus 8 squared. And this is the back of your formula sheet. It tells you all of this right here. You just have to make sure you go to the back. So that's the square root of 36 plus 64, which is the square root of 100. So the length magnitude is 10. Now the direction is a little bit trickier. -6, 8 puts my vector in the second quadrant. So when we do tangent of theta is 8, 6 and find this theta, that's just going to be the reference angle. 1/10 of a degree, so 53.1 degrees. So the direction is 180 minus that reference angle. So the direction is 126.9 degrees. Okay, 17, represent graphically U plus V. So I'll do 17 here and 18 here. So we've got U plus V. This is U, V. Well, there's head to tail. Here's the result, U plus V. Parallelogram is if I also draw them on this side. So there's the parallelogram for U plus V. Now U minus V is just subtraction, is adding the negative. So we've got U, and then instead of V to the right, I'm gonna go negative V is to the left. So this result is U minus V. Let me label these A, B, C, and D. Okay, the dot product between A and B is 2 times 6 plus -3 times 5, which is 12 minus 15, so -3. So for B, find the measure, or the angle between. So we have that formula here. So theta is cosine inverse of the dot product over the magnitudes. So the magnitude of A is the square root of 4 plus 9. And the magnitude of B is the square root of 36 plus 25. 61. So calculate that. I'm going to do -3 divided by the square root of 31 times 61, or 13, oops, times 61. Cosine inverse, so 96.1 degrees. C, find the value of R so that A and C are parallel. So parallel just means one's a scalar of the other. So let's see. If we've got 2, -3, and we want to make it parallel to R, -9, this vector got multiplied by 3, so R is 6. Perpendicular would mean that the dot product equals 0. So B and C is 6R plus 5 times -9 is -45. So 6R equals +45, so R is 9. No, that's 54. 45 divided by 6 is 7.5. And that is the end. Good job on finishing your review. Print a blank one and do it again until you can confidently do all the problems with no help.